Her voice was soft, almost sweet, the kind of voice you'd expect to hear, offering a compliment or a gentle piece of advice. But the words that fell from her lips were sharp as glass. "You're worthless," she said, her eyes never leaving mine. "You've always been worthless, and it's time you stopped pretending otherwise." The room fell silent around us, the hum of conversation dying out as her words echoed in the air. We were in the middle of a dinner party, the table laid with fine china and flickering candles, laughter and warmth filling the space just moments before. Now it was as if the entire world had paused to watch this moment unfold. My breath caught in my throat, my fingers tightening around the stem of my wine glass. I forced a small, polite smile, trying to mask the flush of humiliation creeping up my neck. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I said softly, my voice calm, even as my heart pounded in my chest. She tilted her head, her lips curling into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Don't be sorry," she said lightly. "It's just the truth. Some people are meant to shine and some people aren't." The guests around us shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between us, but no one spoke up. No one told her she was wrong. No one told me I was more than the small hollow thing she tried to make me feel. I could feel the weight of their silence pressing down on me, as heavy as the words she had spoken. I took a slow breath, willing my hands to stop shaking. I wanted to leave, to stand up and walk out of that room and never look back. But I didn't. I sat there, my back straight, my chin lifted. If she wanted to humiliate me, she would have to do more than just say the words. She leaned back in her chair, her smile bright and cruel. "I've always wondered," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "what it must feel like to wake up every morning and know you'll never be more than this." She gestured at me with a delicate flick of her fingers, as if I were nothing more than a piece of furniture taking up space. "But I suppose you're used to it by now." The laughter that followed was soft, polite, but it felt like knives in my skin. My stomach turned a hollow ache settling deep in my chest. But still, I didn't move. I didn't let her see how deeply her words cut. I wouldn't give her that. I looked around the table, searching for any sign of kindness, any hint of someone who might stand with me. But all I saw were downcast eyes and nervous smiles, people who didn't want to get involved. People who would rather let me sit in the shadows than risk their own comfort to pull me into the light. I turned my gaze back to her, meeting her eyes with a quiet calm that surprised even me. "Is that really what you think?" I asked, my voice soft but steady. "That I'm worthless?" She smiled wider, her eyes glittering with triumph. "It's not what I think," she said. "It's what everyone knows. You're just too stubborn to see it." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The words hung between us like a challenge, daring me to fight back, to stand up and prove her wrong. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I let them settle into the center of my chest, heavy and cold. Because I knew that if I let them fuel me, they could become something more than just pain. They could become a spark. I took another slow breath, my fingers loosening on the glass. "Thank you for your honesty," I said quietly. "I'll remember it." Her smile faltered for just a moment, confusion flickering in her eyes. But she didn't speak again, and I didn't give her the satisfaction of asking what she meant. The dinner continued around us, the conversation resuming in hesitant bursts. But for me, the night was already over. I sat there, my plate untouched, my mind turning over her words like stones in my hand. Worthless. She had said it so easily, so carelessly, as if it were nothing more than a fact. But I knew better. Later, when the evening finally ended and I stepped out into the cool night air, I let myself feel the weight of it. I let the hurt wash over me in quiet waves, each breath sharp and cold in my lungs. But even as the pain settled deep in my bones, there was something else there too. A quiet resolve. A promise I made to myself in the dark. I wouldn't let her words define me. I wouldn't let her voice be the one that decided who I was or what I was worth. She might have seen me as small and insignificant, but I knew there was more to me than she could ever understand. And I would prove it, not to her, but to myself. As I walked home under the cold glow of the streetlights, I whispered to the night, "You're not worthless." And in that moment, I knew that the story she had tried to write for me wasn't the one I was going to live. this was just the beginning. The next morning, the memory of her words still clung to me like a cold shadow. I woke up early, the pale winter light just beginning to spill through the curtains. My hands were cold, my heart still heavy with the echo of her laughter. Worthless. The word replayed in my mind again and again, each time a little sharper, a little deeper. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long moment, my bare feet resting on the cool wooden floor. I thought about the way she had looked at me, her smile bright and cruel, the way her eyes had dared me to argue. But I hadn't. I had sat there silent and still and let her cut me down. And now, in the quiet of my small bedroom, I wondered why it hurt so much more than I wanted to admit. I dressed slowly, choosing clothes that made me feel safe, soft neutral colors that wouldn't draw attention. I moved through my morning routine with careful precision, each small task a way to steady myself. Brush teeth, comb hair, make coffee. But no matter how I tried to bury it, the ache in my chest stayed with me, a quiet reminder of the night before. When I stepped outside, the world felt too bright. The cold air bit at my cheeks, the sky a sharp, endless blue. I kept my head down as I walked my steps, quick and small. I didn't want anyone to see the cracks in me, the way I was still piecing myself back together. I knew I shouldn't care. I knew her words were nothing more than poison meant to make me small. But it was hard to shake the weight of them, the way they settled into every corner of my mind. At work, I moved through the day like a ghost, my smile tight and brittle. My coworkers greeted me with polite nods, their voices warm and friendly. But I couldn't quite meet their eyes. I felt like everyone could see the truth she had spoken, like they could see how small and worthless I really was. My hands shook as I typed out emails, the words blurring on the screen. I told myself to focus, to be present. But all I could hear was her voice. "You're worthless. You've always been worthless." At lunch, I sat alone in the small break room, the quiet hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. I picked at my sandwich, the taste of it flat and unappealing. Around me, the world carried on, as if nothing had changed. But inside, everything felt different. My chest ached, with a hollow sort of shame, the kind that settles in your bones and makes you wonder if you'll ever be enough. I thought about her again, her perfect smile, her easy confidence. The way she had looked at me like I was something to be brushed aside. And I thought about how easily I had let her do it. I had sat there and let her words wash over me, let them fill the spaces where my confidence should have been. And now, I couldn't stop wondering if she was right. I closed my eyes and took a slow, shaky breath. I told myself that I was stronger than this, that I had survived worse. But the truth was, her words had found the small hidden places where my doubts already lived, and they had grown there like weeds, twisting and curling around every quiet fear I'd ever carried. After work, I walked home slowly, the cold air burning in my lungs. I passed familiar storefronts and friendly faces, but I felt like I was moving through another world entirely. I wanted to believe that this was just a moment, just a passing hurt that would fade with time. But I also knew that some wounds go deeper than others, and some words leave marks you can't always see. When I got home, I sank into the worn armchair by the window, pulling my knees to my chest. The apartment was quiet, the soft ticking of the old clock the only sound. I let the silence wash over me, let it fill the spaces where her words still echoed. I thought about all the times I had been told to be small, to be quiet, to let other people decide my worth. And I thought about how I had listened over and over again. But even in the middle of that shame, there was a small, stubborn spark, a flicker of something that wouldn't be snuffed out. I didn't want to live in the shadow of her words forever. I didn't want to carry this weight any longer. I wanted to believe that there was more to me than the way she saw me, more than the way she tried to make me feel. I stood up slowly, my hands steady, even as my heart still ached. I walked to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face, the shock of it clearing the fog in my mind. I looked at myself in the mirror, really looked, and saw the quiet determination in my own eyes. I whispered to my reflection, "You're not worthless." And for the first time since she had spoken those words, I almost believed it. I knew this wasn't the end of the hurt. I knew there would be days when her words still found me in the dark, still made me doubt everything I was. But I also knew that I was done letting them be the only voice I heard. I was done letting her decide who I was. As I turned off the light and let the apartment slip into darkness, I felt that small spark inside me grow a little brighter. It was still small, still fragile, but it was mine. And I would guard it fiercely until it was strong enough to burn away every doubt she had tried to plant in me. Because she might have told me I was worthless, but I was going to prove first to myself and then to the world that I was so much more than her words. The next morning dawned soft and gray, the light filtering through the curtains in pale, muted colors. I lay in bed for a long moment, listening to the quiet hum of the world outside. My mind was clearer than it had been in days. The shame was still there, like a dull ache in my chest, but beneath it, I felt something new. A spark of defiance, small but unyielding. I got up slowly, my movements deliberate. I brewed a pot of coffee, the rich, bitter scent filling the small kitchen and grounding me. I thought about her words the way she had spoken them, like a simple fact. "You're worthless." But I also thought about the way I hadn't flinched, the way I had held her gaze and refused to let her see how deeply she had cut me. That was strength, I realized. Even in my silence, I hadn't let her break me. As I sipped my coffee, I felt the first threads of a plan forming in the back of my mind. I didn't know exactly what it would look like yet, but I knew one thing for certain: I wouldn't let her words be the end of my story. I wouldn't let her define me. I went about my day with that quiet resolve tucked close to my heart. At work, I moved through the tasks that had always felt small and unimportant, answering phones, filing papers, making sure everyone else had what they needed. But today, each small task felt like a step forward, a way to prove, if only to myself, that I was capable of more than she had ever seen in me. During lunch, I sat in the small break room with a notebook open in front of me. My coworkers laughed and chatted around me, but I was focused, my pen moving steadily across the page. I wasn't sure yet what I was writing, maybe a list, maybe a promise. But it felt like the beginning of something real. Something I could hold on to when the world tried to tell me I wasn't enough. After work, I walked home through the quiet streets, the winter air crisp and cold against my skin. With each step, I let the memories of her words settle a little further away from me. I didn't want to forget them entirely. No, I wanted to remember. Because those words, as cruel as they had been, had lit a fire in me. A fire I didn't even know I was capable of carrying. When I got home, I made myself a simple dinner: soup and bread, warm and comforting. I sat at the small kitchen table and ate slowly, letting the heat of the food chase away the last of the day's chill. I thought about the way she had looked at me that night, so sure of her place in the world, so sure of my insignificance, and I thought about how wrong she was. That night, I pulled out the old journal I hadn't touched in years. Its pages were yellowed and soft, the cover worn from use. I flipped through it slowly, the neat, careful handwriting of a younger me staring back from the page. Dreams and plans I had once believed in before I let the world tell me they were out of reach. I let my fingers rest on those words for a long moment, feeling the quiet ache of everything I had let slip away. But tonight, I didn't feel like those dreams were gone. Tonight, I felt like they were still there, waiting for me to pick them back up. I turned to a fresh page and wrote in careful letters, "I'm not worthless." The words looked small at first, fragile on the page. But as I wrote them again and again, they began to feel real, solid, like a promise I was making to myself. I stayed up late into the night, writing out everything I wanted to remember. The ways I was strong even when no one else saw it. The ways I had cared for others, held families together, done the quiet work that no one ever thanked me for. I wrote about the things that made me proud, the small victories that had carried me through dark days. And with every word, I felt that spark grow a little brighter. I realized then that I didn't need her to tell me I was worth something. I didn't need her approval or her permission. My worth wasn't something she could give me or take away. It was mine. It had always been mine. When I finally put down my pen, the clock on the wall read past midnight. My hand was cramped and sore, but I felt lighter than I had in days. I closed the journal and sat back in my chair, letting the quiet of the night settle around me. Outside, the city was still and dark, the only sound the soft whisper of the wind against the window. But inside, I felt a steady warmth, a glow that had nothing to do with the cold or the dark. I whispered to myself, "You are not worthless." And this time, I didn't just say it, I believed it. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be days when her words still found me, in the dark days, when I'd wonder if I was fooling myself to believe in more. But I also knew that I was done letting those doubts stop me. I was done letting her decide who I was, because she had told me I was worthless. But she was wrong, and I was going to prove it, not for her, not for anyone else, but for me. This was the spark, and I was ready to let it burn. The days that followed felt like a quiet rebellion. Nothing outwardly changed. I still woke early, still dressed in the same soft sweaters and comfortable slacks, still moved through the world with a polite smile and careful words. But inside, I was different. Each day, I carried that spark in my chest like a secret, a promise that I would not let her words define me. At work, I began to take notice of the things I had always done so quietly, the tasks I handled without thanks, the small ways I made the world run smoothly. I saw the way I kept everything in order, the way I made sure no one else ever felt the sting of being unseen. And I realized those things had value. I had value. I started to keep a small list in the back of my journal. Every time I did something that mattered, no matter how small, I wrote it down. Helped a coworker find an important file. Made sure a client felt heard and understood. Remembered the little details that made people feel cared for. Each line felt like a tiny act of defiance, a quiet way of telling the world I am here. I matter. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. It was enough that I knew it, that I saw it. It felt like a small light in the dark, and I was determined to protect it. At night, I read through old notes and plans I had tucked away years ago. I found the pieces of dreams I'd buried under layers of doubt, the little ideas I had once been too afraid to try. I started to work on them again, one small step at a time. Late into the evening, I would sit at my kitchen table with a cup of tea, sketching out ideas and making lists of what I needed to learn. It wasn't about proving anything to her anymore. It was about proving it to myself, that I was capable, that I could build something of my own, no matter how small. One evening, I stayed late at work, the office quiet around me, as the sun set outside the tall windows. I pulled out an old project proposal I'd drafted years ago, one I'd never had the courage to show anyone. It was an idea for a new client program, something that would make a real difference, something that mattered. I read through it carefully, making notes in the margins, refining each section, until it felt strong and clear. I could hear her voice in the back of my mind, her cold, dismissive tone, but this time I didn't let it stop me. This time, I let it push me. I let it remind me that my worth wasn't hers to decide. By the time I finished, the office was dark and silent, but I felt a quiet thrill in my chest, a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in so long. When I walked home, the cold air felt sharp and bracing, but I didn't pull my coat tighter. I let the chill wake me up, let it remind me that I was alive and moving forward. I thought about how easy it would have been to let her words sink into me and stay there, how easy it would have been to let them become the truth. But I refused. I wasn't going to let her be the narrator of my life. That weekend, I visited the small library down the street, the one I had always loved for its quiet corners and soft light. I checked out books on subjects I'd once been too afraid to explore: public speaking, business planning, self-confidence. I carried them home like treasures, each one a step forward, each one a promise to myself. I spent hours reading scribbling notes in my journal, letting the words sink into me like water into dry earth. I didn't rush it. I didn't try to be perfect. I just kept going one page at a time, one quiet effort after another. And as I worked, I felt something shift inside me. A sense of possibility that had been buried under years of doubt and careful silence. I could almost see the shape of the woman I wanted to become, a woman who didn't flinch when someone tried to tear her down, who didn't shrink herself to make others comfortable. One night, as I sat at my table, surrounded by books and notes, I realized I was smiling. A small secret smile that felt like the first real thing I'd felt in weeks. I wasn't there yet. I still had miles to go, and I knew the road would be hard. But I also knew that I was done waiting for someone else to tell me I was enough. I whispered to myself, "You're not worthless." And this time, it felt like the truest thing I had ever said. As I turned off the lights and slipped into bed, I thought about everything that had brought me to this moment. The insult that had cut so deep. The shame that had tried to take root. The small, stubborn spark that refused to die. And I knew, as I closed my eyes and let sleep come, that this was only the beginning. Because I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building. I was growing. And one day, she would see that. One day, I would show her and myself exactly what I was worth. A week after I started my quiet rebuilding, the first real test of my efforts arrived without warning. It was a Monday morning, and the air in the office was sharp with cold. I walked in early, my breath puffing out in little clouds, as I made my way up the steps. The weight of her words still lingered in the back of my mind, but it didn't feel as heavy as before. I had built something in that quiet space inside me, a small, steady certainty that I was worth more than she had ever seen. The day started like any other. Emails, phone calls, the usual polite conversations that never seemed to touch anything real. But just after lunch, the manager called everyone into the small conference room. He looked serious, his eyes scanning the group as we settled into our chairs. "We have a problem," he said simply. "One of our biggest clients is threatening to leave. They're unhappy with the way their last project was handled. We need a solution, and we need it fast." A hush fell over the room. I could feel the tension like a pulse in the air, everyone shifting in their seats, glancing at one another. I sat quietly, my hands folded in my lap, my mind already turning over the problem. I knew the client he was talking about. I knew their needs, their worries, the little details that everyone else always seemed to overlook. And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't expected: excitement. When the manager asked for suggestions, the room fell silent. No one wanted to be the first to speak. No one wanted to risk offering an idea that might fail. But I didn't let that stop me. I cleared my throat softly, my voice calm, and even as I spoke, "I think I can help," I said. All eyes turned to me, surprise, and something else, curiosity, shimmering in the quiet. I took a deep breath, the plan I had been working on in my head spilling out in careful, measured words. I explained what the client really wanted, what they had asked for time and again, but never gotten. I showed them how we could fix it, how we could go beyond what they expected, and make them feel truly seen. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. I spoke with the quiet authority of someone who knew exactly what they were talking about. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then the manager nodded slowly, a thoughtful look in his eyes. "That's actually a very good idea," he said. "Can you take the lead on this?" My heart thudded in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. "Yes," I said simply, "I can." I spent the rest of the afternoon working on the plan, pulling together notes and ideas, reaching out to the client to hear them out directly. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was doing something that mattered, like I was building something real piece by piece. When I finally left the office that night, the winter sky was already dark, the streetlights glowing soft and golden. I walked home slowly, my steps light, despite the cold. I thought about the way the room had gone quiet when I spoke. The way they had listened. Really listened. It was a small thing maybe, just one moment in a long string of days. But to me, it felt like the first crack in the wall she had tried to build around me. The next morning, the manager called me into his office. My heart fluttered in my chest as I stepped inside, but I kept my chin high. He looked up from his desk, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "The client loved your idea," he said simply. "They're staying. In fact, they're expanding their contract. You saved this account." For a moment, I couldn't speak. the words caught in my throat, hot and bright. Then I managed a quiet, "Thank you." He nodded, his eyes kind. "You did good work," he said. "You should be proud." I walked out of his office with my head held high, my steps sure and steady. Around me, the office hummed with life, people moving through their tasks with purpose and focus. But for me, everything felt different. Lighter, brighter. Because for the first time, I felt like I had proven something to myself. That I wasn't just surviving. I was contributing. I was making a difference. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea, the small glow of the lamp warming the quiet room. I thought about her voice again, those words she had thrown at me like weapons. "You're worthless." And I realized that I didn't believe them anymore. Not even a little. I picked up my journal and wrote it down in neat, careful letters. "You are not worthless. You are enough. You are more than they will ever see." I let the words settle into the page, each one a quiet declaration. A promise. I knew there would be more challenges ahead, more days when doubt would creep back in. But I also knew that I had found something stronger than her voice inside me. My own. As I closed the journal and turned out the light, I felt that spark inside me burn a little brighter. It was small still, but it was real. And it was mine. Because she had told me I was worthless. But today, I had shown myself that I was worth so much more. And that was just the beginning. The days that followed my first real success felt like they glowed from the inside out. Every morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose that I hadn't felt in years. My steps were lighter, my smile more genuine, the quiet spark inside me burning brighter with each small win. For the first time, I felt like I was taking up space in the world, and that it was okay for me to do so. But not everyone was happy to see me stand taller. It started with small things. A cold shoulder here, a dismissive glance there. The whispers in the office when they thought I wasn't listening. "Who does she think she is?" someone murmured once, the words slipping through the air like poison. But I didn't let them in. I held my head high and reminded myself of what I knew: I was more than their whispers. I was more than their doubts. Still, it was hard to ignore completely. There were moments when I would catch someone looking at me with that same sharpness in their eyes, the same sharpness she had used when she told me I was worthless. It made my chest tighten, my heart beat faster. But each time I took a slow breath and chose to keep going, because I knew that if I stopped now, I would be giving them exactly what they wanted. The real resistance, though, came from her. I knew it would. She had always been good at twisting words, at making even the smallest victories feel like failures. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when she called me. Her voice was as smooth as ever, calm and measured, but there was a sharp edge to it that I recognized immediately. "I heard about your little project," she said. "Congratulations. But don't let it go to your head. One win doesn't make you important." I swallowed hard, the old fear rising up in my throat. But I didn't let it take hold. "Thank you," I said evenly. "But I'm proud of what I did. And I won't let you make me feel small about it." For a moment, there was silence on the line. Then she laughed, soft and cold. "You've always been too sensitive," she said. "Always looking for validation where there isn't any. Don't fool yourself into thinking you're special now." I took a breath, my hand gripping the phone a little tighter. "I'm not looking for validation," I said quietly. "I'm looking for truth. And the truth is, I'm not worthless. I never was." She didn't respond right away, and in that silence, I felt the shift, small but real. A crack in the armor she had always worn so easily. When she finally spoke, her voice was tight. "We'll see how long this little phase lasts," she said. "Don't come crying to me when it all falls apart." And then she hung up, leaving me standing there in the quiet of my kitchen, the rain tapping softly against the window. For a moment, I let the hurt wash over me. Let the old ache of her words settle into my bones. But then, I took a slow, steady breath and whispered to myself, "You're not nobody." And in that quiet, I felt the spark inside me, steady and sure. The next day, I woke up early and went for a long walk. The air was crisp and cold, the city still quiet in the early light. As I walked, I thought about everything she had said, everything she had tried to make me believe. And I thought about how far I had come already, how much I had grown. She wanted me to doubt myself. She wanted me to fall back into the smallness she had always expected of me. But I refused. I spent the rest of that day working harder than I ever had. I poured everything I had into my projects, into the small, steady steps that felt like laying bricks for the life I wanted to build. And with each quiet act of effort, I felt her voice grow a little fainter, a little less powerful. That evening, I called a friend, someone who had always seen the good in me, even when I couldn't. We talked for hours, their voice warm and kind, their laughter a gentle balm to the places that still felt raw. "You're doing it," they said simply. "You're proving that you're worth so much more than she ever let you believe." I held on to those words like a lifeline. Because in the end, it wasn't about proving anything to her. It was about proving it to myself. When I hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, the soft glow of the lamp spilling over the worn wood of the kitchen table. I opened my journal and wrote it out in careful letters. Her resistance doesn't change my truth. The words looked small on the page, but they felt huge in my chest, because I knew deep down that the only person who got to decide my worth was me. As I turned off the light and climbed into bed, I let myself smile, just a small, quiet smile, but real. I knew the road ahead would still be hard. I knew there would be more resistance, more people who would try to make me doubt myself. But I also knew that I had something stronger than their doubts. I had my own voice, my own power, my own quiet, steady spark, and I was done letting anyone else put it out. The days turned into weeks, and slowly, the quiet effort I had poured into my work began to blossom into something more. At first, it was just small things, a client sending a grateful email, a coworker stopping by my desk to thank me for a thoughtful detail I'd caught. But piece by piece, those small wins built into something bigger. And with every moment, I felt my confidence settle deeper into my bones. One morning, the manager asked to see me in his office. My stomach fluttered as I walked down the hallway, but I kept my head high and my steps steady. He smiled when I walked in, gesturing for me to sit. "I've been watching your work," he said, "and I'm impressed. You've taken on more responsibility than anyone expected, and you've done it with grace." I felt my cheeks flush with heat, but I didn't look away. "Thank you," I said softly. My voice didn't tremble this time. He nodded, a thoughtful look in his eyes. "I have a new project coming in," he said. "It's important, and I think you're the right person to lead it." For a moment, the room seemed to tilt around me. I felt my breath catch my hands, going still in my lap. "You want me to lead it?" I asked, the words quiet but sure. "Yes," he said simply. "I trust you." Those 3 words settled into my chest like a warm weight. I let out a slow breath, feeling something inside me click into place. "I won't let you down," I said. That afternoon, I sat at my desk, the weight of the new responsibility humming in the air around me. It wasn't just a project, it was proof. Proof that my work mattered, that I mattered, that everything she had tried to take from me was still mine, waiting for me to claim it. I spent hours mapping out the project, pulling together every scrap of knowledge I had collected over the years. I reached out to the client, listening carefully, making notes showing them that they were heard in ways no one else had managed before. And as I worked, I felt that quiet spark inside me burn brighter, fueled by the simple truth that I was more than what she had ever seen. In the middle of that busy week, she called me again. Her voice was as smooth as ever, but I could hear the tightness behind it. "I heard you're leading the new project," she said, her tone cool and dismissive. "Don't let it go to your head. You've always had a tendency to overreach." I didn't let her words sink in this time. I kept my voice calm, steady. "I'm not overreaching," I said softly. "I'm just finally taking up the space I deserve." There was a pause, and I imagined her frown on the other end of the line. "We'll see how long that lasts," she said. But I didn't let her doubt touch me. "We will," I said. And I hung up my hand steady as I set the phone back in its cradle. That night, I stayed late at the office, the quiet of the empty space, a comfort as I worked. I let the soft hum of the building keep me company, the quiet tapping of my fingers on the keyboard, a steady rhythm in the dark. I felt no anger, no bitterness, only a deep, steady determination that she couldn't take away from me. By the end of the week, the first phase of the project was done. I stood in the manager's office again, presenting my work with a calm, sure voice. The client was thrilled. My coworkers watched me with a new kind of respect in their eyes, one that was no longer tinged with doubt or pity. And I realized in that moment that I had done more than just prove myself. I had changed the way they saw me, the way I saw myself. That evening, I walked home through the quiet streets, the early spring air soft against my skin. I felt the weight of the day settle into me, but it wasn't heavy, it was grounding, a reminder of how far I had come. I thought about the way she had tried to keep me small, the way she had used her words like chains. And I thought about the way I had broken those chains, one quiet step at a time. When I got home, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window, the city lights flickering in the distance. I thought about how she would never see me the way I saw myself now. And that was okay, because I didn't need her to. I picked up my journal and wrote it out, the words, steady and sure I am not worthless. I never was. And I will never let anyone make me feel that way again. As I set the pen down, I felt that quiet spark inside me flare into something brighter, a steady, unwavering flame. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was growing, thriving, and no matter what she said or did, she couldn't take that away from me. This was my breakthrough, my moment to claim everything she had tried to deny me, my moment to stand in my own light, unafraid and unashamed, because she had told me I was worthless, but she was wrong. And every breath I took, every small victory I claimed, was proof of that truth. This was only the beginning, and I was ready for whatever came next. The first warm days of spring felt like a quiet celebration, the air soft and fragrant with the promise of renewal. I woke early each morning, the light slipping through my curtains in gentle waves. I stretched in bed, feeling the weight in my chest that had once been shame, now turned into something steadier, something like hope. At work, the project I had led continued to grow, each small success building on the last. My manager started coming to me for advice, asking my opinion before making decisions. Coworkers who had once looked past me now paused to listen, their eyes warm and curious, instead of cold and dismissive. It was a quiet shift, but I felt it with every word, every small nod of respect, and I held it close. One afternoon, I found a small note on my desk. Just a simple line written in neat, careful script, "Your work is making a difference." It wasn't signed, but I didn't need a name to know what it meant. I tucked it into the back of my journal, a small reminder that even in the smallest ways I was seen. That week, the client I had helped called to speak with me directly. "Thank you," they said simply. "No one has ever really listened the way you did." I felt my heart swell at their words, the quiet pride in my chest like a steady drumbeat. "I'm glad I could help," I said softly. "That's what I'm here for." And I meant it. I knew there would always be people who didn't want to see my worth, people like her, whose voices had once been so loud in my head. But for the first time, those voices felt small, faint echoes that couldn't touch the steady certainty I had found in myself. One evening, I ran into her outside a small cafe I liked to visit on quiet days. She looked the same as always, composed, elegant, her eyes sharp as she took me in. But I wasn't the same, and she saw it. Well, she said, her lips curling in a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I hear you've been busy." I met her gaze steadily, my voice calm. "I have," I said. "And it's been good." Her smile wavered just a flicker, but it was enough. "Don't get too comfortable," she said softly. "You've always been more fragile than you like to admit." I took a breath, feeling the quiet power in my chest, steady and sure. "Maybe," I said, "but fragile doesn't mean worthless." For a moment she didn't speak. Her eyes searched mine, looking for a crack, a weakness to exploit. But she didn't find it. Because it wasn't there anymore. She turned away with a small, tight smile. "We'll see," she said. And she walked away, her heels clicking sharp and precise on the pavement. But I didn't watch her go. I turned back to the cafe window, my reflection calm and steady in the glass. I saw the woman I had become, someone who had walked through the quiet storms of doubt and come out standing taller. That night, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, the city lights soft in the distance. I thought about all the times I had let her words shape the way I saw myself, all the small ways I had let doubt whisper in the dark. And I thought about how far I had come, how many quiet victories I had claimed along the way. I realized then that her voice no longer mattered, because I knew my own voice now, and it was stronger than I had ever believed it could be. At work, I was given more projects, more responsibility. My ideas were met with real consideration, my thoughts valued in ways I had once only dreamed of. It wasn't about the title or the recognition from others. It was about knowing deep in my bones that I had earned every bit of it. One morning, the manager called me into his office. "I wanted to tell you in person," he said. "We're promoting you. You've earned it." The words settled over me like a warm cloak, quiet and steady. I nodded, my smile soft. "Thank you," I said. "I won't let you down." He shook his head, his eyes kind. "I know you won't," he said. "You've already proven that." When I left his office, the world felt brighter somehow, as if every color had deepened just a little. I walked down the hallway, my steps light, and sure, the small smile on my lips, a quiet testament to everything I had fought to claim. I thought about her words again, the way she had tried to make me feel small. But now they were nothing more than echoes, soft, distant, and fading with every step I took. That evening, I wrote in my journal, "I am enough. I have always been enough. And no one can take that from me." The words felt final in a way that nothing else ever had. A full stop. A line in the sand I would never let anyone cross again, because she had told me I was worthless. But she had been wrong, and I had proved it to her, to the world, but most importantly, to myself. As I set down my pen and closed the journal, I felt that quiet certainty settle into my bones like a promise. This was my recognition, my quiet triumph. And it was only the beginning. The last days of spring felt like a quiet celebration, the warm air rich with the scent of new blossoms. I woke early, my room filled with soft golden light, and felt a calm I hadn't known in years. It wasn't just the work I had done, or the recognition I had earned. It was the steady certainty that lived inside me now. A certainty no one else could ever take away. At the venue that had once been just a workplace, I found myself moving with quiet confidence. My voice no longer trembled when I spoke. My ideas no longer felt like something to be hidden. And when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the woman she had tried to make me believe I was. I saw someone who had fought to find her worth and won. She hadn't called me in weeks. I wondered sometimes if she had finally realized that her words no longer held any power over me. Or maybe she was waiting, biding her time. But it didn't matter. Because I knew now that her voice didn't get to be the final word in my story. That was mine to claim. One morning, as I walked into work, I found a small card on my desk. Just a simple line in neat script. "Thank you for showing us what quiet strength looks like." I smiled as I tucked it away, my heart warm with the knowledge that the quiet work I had done was not just for me. It was a beacon for others, too, proof that even the smallest light can shine bright enough to guide the way. That afternoon, she walked into the office. She was as poised and polished as ever, her eyes sharp as they swept over me. But when they settled on mine, there was something else there, a flicker of uncertainty. She stopped in front of my desk, her lips parting in a small, tight smile. "I see you've been busy," she said, her tone calm and almost curious. "You've made a place for yourself here." I met her gaze steadily, my own voice quiet but firm. "I have," I said simply, "because I realized I didn't need your permission to belong here." Her smile didn't waver, but I could see it in her eyes, the small, grudging respect of someone who knows they can't change the truth. "I suppose I underestimated you," she said. I let out a small breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle around us like a hush. Most people did, I said. But it doesn't matter now. I know who I am, and I know what I'm worth. She didn't argue. She just nodded once, a small, sharp motion, and then she turned and walked away. And I watched her go with a calm I hadn't felt the first time she turned her back on me. Because this time, I didn't need her to see me. I saw myself. That night, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, the soft glow of the city lights flickering in the distance. I thought about all the quiet moments that had built this strength inside me, the small victories, the long nights spent with nothing but my own thoughts, and the steady beat of my heart. I thought about the way I had once believed her words were the final truth. And I thought about how far I had come to understand that they weren't. I opened my journal one last time and wrote it out in neat, careful script. This is my final word: I am worthy. And I always have been. The words felt like a promise and a declaration, all at once, a quiet anthem I would carry with me for the rest of my life. Because she had tried to make me feel small, but I had learned that my worth wasn't something she could give or take away. It was mine. And no matter how many times she tried to make me forget it, I would always remember. As I set down my pen, I whispered it into the stillness of the night. You are not worthless. And in that whisper, I felt the power of every step I had taken to claim those words as my own. The next morning, I woke to a new day, the sun warm and bright in the sky. I walked out into the world, with my head held high, my heart open and sure. Because I wasn't the woman she had tried to make me. I was the woman I had chosen to become. And I would never again let anyone tell me who I could be. If you've ever been told that you're not enough, if you've ever felt the weight of someone else's doubts, trying to bury your light, remember this. Your worth is not defined by their words. Your worth is yours alone. And you have every right to claim it. So stand up, take back your voice, and let the world see the strength that lives inside you. Because you are not worthless. You never were. And you never will be.